Today, we're talking about the future of the mall. I was doing a little bit of thinking about this. Until the 1960s, when you said the term mall, you were talking about like a pedestrian walkway, like the mall in Washington, D.C. And then developers started building retail and department stores around the walkways, and they became a managed place where you would go to eat and shop. And, I would say for me, mall is a magic word that evokes memories of the past. Now, for some people, it's more old fashioned. It's something that, they think about as the way people used to shop before online shopping came about. But I think for my guest today, the mall is something that's always in a state of becoming. In other words, there is no perfect mall. It's a moving target, and what does the future for the mall hold? Well, maybe it's got apartments or co-working space, or maybe it has an aquarium or an amusement park ride or a hotel or a museum, or, the sky's the limit when it comes to the mall. I think the mall can be anything. So my guests today are two national leaders that are defining what the future of the mall is going to be. Today, we're talking with Stephen Lebovitz, CEO of CBL Properties. They own 94 retail properties, and 46 of those are malls. And Kristen Miller, president of retail property management at JLL. They manage a lot of properties, and many of them are malls. So these folks are both positioned as experts on the present and future of the mall. And we are going to talk about it right now on Everything We Know About Retail. This is the show where we tell all of you everything we know about retail and real estate. So we are broadcasting live on LinkedIn and YouTube. If you aren't able to see us live and you want to check out the archive, it's always available over on YouTube. If you go to everythingweknow.show, that takes you to our historical archive that also has like a bunch of cool videos. We recently did a tour of San Francisco, Beverly Hills. We've got some LA retail videos coming up. They're all going to be posted there at everythingweknow.show. So my name is James Cook, and I'm coming to you live from Indiana. I am at a mall right now. I'm at the shops at Perry Crossing. So I'm living and breathing it right now. We've got Keisha Virtue in the chat room, making sure to answer any questions that you have about any research questions. So say hi to Keisha and keep those questions coming. We're going to get to as many of them in our Q&A portion of our show as we can. Before we get into this, though, I want to tell you about something I've been thinking about. I've been messing around with. So I've been doing a lot of research into generative AI. So it's the AI that makes pictures and videos and can write whole paragraphs. And I thought, well, maybe, AI is so futuristic. Maybe AI can tell me, what the future of the mall will be. So what I did is, the way it works is you type in a prompt. And so I went into the AI tool that creates static pictures. And I just typed in the words, the mall of the future. And what it showed me was this, which honestly, it looks like a very nice mall. It also looks a lot like the mall of the present. You got a little bit of green space in there, multiple stories, nice looking mall. So the thing that I've learned about AI is you've got to put in really specific prompts in order to get what you want. So I got more specific and I said, it's 2050. It's the mall of the future. It's a world-class retail experience. And what it showed me looked a lot like a really nice A mall. It kind of reminds me of like the Beverly Center. I don't know, maybe the Mall of Dubai. So what I'm starting to learn here is that AI is pretty good at describing the present, not so great at necessarily predicting the future. But undaunted, I moved on and went over to a tool that creates little AI generated video shorts. And I typed in the keywords for families, futuristic retail, and an entertainment complex. And it created this, which really makes me think of airport retail, right? So again, what I'm getting at here is we're not quite sure what the future of the mall is going to entail. I tried one more. I said, okay, well, I'm going to get really specific. I know mixed use is a big deal. So I put in that term. I said it's got mixed use. It's a Saturday afternoon. And it created this. Not really a mall of the future, more of it looks like a nice residential shopping complex. So anyway, key takeaways here are that AI pretty neat at creating images, a little dreamlike quality to them, but maybe not so good at predicting the future. So to predict the future, we're going to have to turn to our experts. And our first expert today is Stephen Lebovitz, CEO of CBL. Welcome, Stephen.
Good afternoon. Welcome. And hello, James.
It's great to have you. And I'm going to let folks know that we also recorded a oral history of CBL podcast that just dropped live yesterday on our audio podcast called Where We Buy. Totally different from today's topic, so worth checking out separately. Interviewed your father, the founder of CBL, as well.
That was a lot of fun, and it came out great. So thank you, and we're really looking forward to today as well.
Yeah, so you're joining us live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, where CBL is headquartered. I alluded to the scope of your portfolio, but let's dig in a little bit. How would you describe the properties? You have almost, 60 million square feet?
Yeah, so we have almost 60 million square feet. Like you said, 46 are enclosed malls, but we have 95 properties in total. And so we're in 22 states. And a lot of our markets are non-major metropolitan markets in the Southeast, Southwest, and Midwest. So Chattanooga, we have Hamilton Place Mall, and we have a number of open air centers around it. We have properties in Texas and places like Laredo and College Station and Brownsville. The largest markets we're in are Nashville and St. Louis and Kansas City, but most of our portfolio is in, like I said, those non-major markets. We look for a lot of growth, strong demographics, and the location of the malls and the properties is really what drives their success.
Yeah. So I want to dig into this the term mall, which a lot of owners kind of have shied away from that term. You go on your website and it's right there. What does it say? Meet us at the mall. Yeah. So tell me about the decision to double down on mall.
So I'd say that mall kind of became a 4-letter word for a while there, and we were part of that movement. We were looking at all types of other terminology. We went to we had a tagline, great shopping places. We had suburban town centers. We really kind of for a while ran away from the mall as in our terminology, and then we decided that it really wasn't working. That when shoppers go to our properties, they call them the mall. We're going to the mall. That is like what everyone says. And so we decided, let's not fight it. Let's embrace it. And the timing was really interesting because it was, we took on this tagline in November 21, right after COVID, and people were craving getting together and being together in the social experience that malls provide that you really don't get with a lot of other real estate. So I think meet us at the mall was really timely. And, mall is, it's in the vernacular of our society. Like you said, it's not like it was, but over the last 50 years, it's for a lot of reasons, people think very fondly of the malls, and it's transcended generations. And you see even today, people yearn for, and they really like the experience that you can get at a mall, and that's who we are.
Do you think that the mall continually has to reinvent itself to maintain relevance? I mean, just because, of changing consumer tastes?
Oh, absolutely. And I would say even in its early iterations, malls were reinventing. It was the scope of the reinventing that's changed more dramatically in the last 10 plus years. Originally, when the malls were built, they had multiple department stores. They would bring new retailers to markets where they would open. They were a new shopping experience. Retailers have always changed. There's always been transition with retailers and trying to bring in the latest iteration, the latest fashion. So that was what reinvention was. And now it's become more about different types of uses, different types of anchors, and even adding mixed uses to what the mall needs to be to stay relevant. And sometimes malls go through a life cycle and they get torn down and something else gets built in the place of that location, just because that mall has, for whatever reasons, has lived its useful life. But for the most part, a lot of the malls really in our portfolio have a great future. And our job is to figure out what that future is. And I will say I feel a little bit better from a job security point of view after seeing what your AI came up with, because clearly they're not seeing anything that's particularly insightful.
I couldn't agree more. I thought I was going to get some really fascinating stuff, and I was not blown away. So when you look at a particular mall in your portfolio, does it scream out, oh, we need to add residential here, or this one definitely needs some medical use, or is it more work to figure out how you might change the mix?
So we look at every mall and really every property to figure out what its strategy needs to be, short term, near, medium term, long term. And all uses are on the table, whether it's education, medical, residential, hotels. So we're looking at the market, we're looking at the voids, and then what's working in the market and what could work in the future. But they're all different. There's no cookie cutter approach that we can take anymore, because certain markets have demand for certain aspects that others don't. And it's that way with stores too, with boxes. We've added fitness and a lot of other kind of boxes to the malls, like value retail or Dick's Sporting Goods or other sporting goods. And the mall is just not as straightforward as it originally was in terms of what's going to work in the future.
Yeah. And it's getting more complicated now with, the cost of construction and labor and capital, but we'll get into that in a little bit. I wanted to ask you, I noticed that CBL released its first, I guess you'd call it an ESG annual report. What was the impetus to do that? And what do you think, what kind of progress do you think you've made in that area?
So that's something we're really proud of. We spent a lot of, and we've always been involved in our communities. That's been a core value for CBL, and the malls play such an important role in the communities, whether it's jobs, taxes, all the social aspects. And this is really an extension of that, with ESG, and it has the different components of it. So it's a very broad initiative, corporate wide. But I'd say there's really two primary aspects. One is the external and just what we're doing to make our communities better, what we're doing to be more energy efficient and to make the world a better place. And also it's an internal initiative. We've done a lot internally in terms of our workforce and our staff and our team to make CBL a great place to work. We've started different initiatives. We call them, CBL Cares and CBL Fit and CBL Social and CBL Community, and they're all about giving people outlets to be involved, to contribute, to feel included, and to promote their ideas, because that's really what's going to make our company thrive over the long term. So it all ties together into that ESG effort.
Now, do you find, I would imagine the ESG initiative is really sort of a behind the scenes thing. The average shopper, they don't that doesn't compute with them, right? They're not thinking, boy, I wonder what their, as I'm walking into the mall, I wonder what their position is on sustainability or something. Or is there a consumer facing component to it?
I think and we're a public company, we're a REIT. From an investor point of view, it's very important. And investors look at it very closely, and what we're doing. There's agencies that provide scores, and we're always looking to improve from that point of view. So that is definitely a driving force. I think in communities where we're always working with government, zoning boards or city councils, they're looking at those aspects of the property, the mall. And if we're doing a redevelopment, then it becomes really an integral part of how that redevelopment is going to work, from energy efficiency. A lot of the infrastructure is dated and needs to get updated. So from that point of view, it's very important. Shoppers, I think at the end of the day, it's primarily what are the stores and what are the uses and what are the experiences that I'm going to be offered. But I think generationally, there's a lot of interest in it and in what companies are doing as part of these efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, Stephen, we're going to say goodbye to you for a few minutes. We're going to bring you back in our Future of the Mall group chat. So don't go anywhere. And meanwhile, if anyone has a question for Stephen, drop it into the chat and we're going to get to as many as we can. But first, we're going to have a conversation with Kristen Miller. Welcome, Kristen.
Hi, James. How are you?
Very well. So, Kristen, you're joining us from Atlanta today, which I can see. I see lovely sunny Buckhead in the background.
Yes.
So, Kristen, you lead retail property management at JLL. And okay, hold on. I had this number in front of me. Here it is. 542 retail properties in the US and Canada. And of course, you probably go to every single one, right?
All the time.
So
as many as I can.
Right. Yes. I absolutely know that your time is spent on the road. So no jokes about that. What, tell me a little bit about that portfolio, kind of something for everyone, right?
Yeah. Well, you said it. And interestingly enough, I got a chance to tour some of the properties that we manage in and around Montreal yesterday. So I'm quite current on what's going on in the Canada market at this point, and heard a bit about Brazil as well. But here in the United States, we manage and provide agency leasing services for about 75 million square feet. Probably 42 or 3 million of that is in mall and mall-like properties. Stephen talked beautifully about malls and sort of the composition of a mall, but we include in that number transportation centers, outlet centers, lifestyle centers, other types of other formats that pick up on the same attributes of an enclosed mall. And then we have a separate but co-equal and fully integrated division for open air centers, grocery anchored, unanchored small specialty centers. And that's another sort of 33 million square feet, something like that. As you said, it's, and that's just in the United States. So we're just under 500 shopping centers in the US, and we are pleased to manage and, as I said, conduct leasing activity for some of them, for a whole host of clients, ranging from high net worth individuals to private equity to, in some cases, REITs, certainly developers, and institutional investors.
So all kinds of markets, right?
Yes.
It could be big, small, medium, just wherever you're asked to go, you're going to go.
Yeah. Where we can be effective for the client and for the property, we will absolutely go there. So if you look at the map of the United States and to see where the properties are located, you'd see that there is a concentration east of the Mississippi, certainly in Texas, up and down the West Coast, and then presence in the Plains states in the middle of the country. Malls that we are here to talk about today, the malls that we work with tend to be in secondary and tertiary markets because the REITs like CBL tend to self-perform and own many of the malls in the largest markets in the US. Open air shopping centers, however, that's where we we tend to be concentrated in larger cities because our management teams have multiple property responsibility. And so we can be most efficient and effective for our clients when we have when we have larger portfolios in the bigger cities. And then lifestyle centers, mixed use developments, transportation centers also tend to be toward the larger cities, like open air product.
That makes sense. So, Kristen, talking about malls, to maintain their relevance, do you when you're talking to the owner of a mall, is there a sense that they have to be constantly changing, or what's the conversation like about maintaining the shopper's eye, I guess?
Yep. So changing might be the word. Evolving is definitely an evolution. Sometimes the evolution will happen in kind of large steps, and in other times it's an iterative process. But just as Stephen touched on merchandising, it's all about the consumer, right? It is all about the end user of the property. That is what we're solving for. And so we're working with the merchants on site, the tenants, to develop the best possible merchandising plan to constantly be moving toward and keeping abreast of, if not ahead of, shopper demand, the shopper's desires, wants, needs. And so I say shopper, but at the end of the day, just as Stephen commented on it, we're meeting the community's needs, which sometimes and more often involves other activities, non-retail activities, non-shopping activities at a property. So yes, our conversations with our clients are always and constantly and every day about how to further improve the experience, the offering on the real estate, and it can take a lot of different forms.
And if we talk about non-retail, I mean, are we talking about medical or what, could that be all kinds of different things?
Theoretically, anything. These are very often, so the properties that are getting repositioned and having, ranging from an anchor redevelopment up to a more substantial site-wide redevelopment, they're good real estate, right? And it isn't surprising, and it shouldn't be surprising to anybody, that through the passage of time, some of that real estate should be adapted to other uses to meet the evolving needs of the community that's around that real estate. But the number one thing from your research is multifamily, right? In addition to retail, the redevelopments almost always retain a retail component, and often now we're often adding multifamily to address the housing shortage throughout the United States, which, by the way, is just as apparent in Canada. If we've got some folks from Canada, the population growth in Canada is so significant that one of the best ways to add relatively close in housing and get it close to the retail is to put it literally alongside the retail. And I think we all know retail follows rooftops. This is a case of retail followed rooftops, and now the rooftops are coming to, more rooftops are coming to join the retail. Very synergistic.
Yeah.
But to your point, medical, absolutely, certainly a growing part of, the U.S. economy. And we've got good examples of that, like 100 Oaks in Nashville and that sort of thing. But certainly office, look at Phipps Plaza here in Atlanta, has done a very nice job. Hospitality, again, you can look at Simon's Lenox development, Lenox Plaza property, and see that they've got hotels now adjacent to it. The objective is to fulfill the needs of the end user of the property, make life as convenient as humanly possible for them, and in some cases, by building a community on a mall site, instead of being only retail and maybe some food and beverage and a growing entertainment component, we can fulfill people's greater life needs.
Yeah, I love it. So the more needs you can fulfill, the more reasons they have to go. Well, I want to turn a question here to a question about technology. So
Mhm.
first, I'll preface this with real estate, not always the most technically advanced industry, I know,
Yeah.
but what new technologies have you seen rising up? And do you see being even more important in the future, both, and this could be behind the scenes or consumer facing, whatever you want to talk about?
Yeah, so absolutely. We are all in on technology and recognize the sheer importance of it just for day-to-day living. Absolutely. So if you look at a multi-tenant retail property, let's say an enclosed mall, um, our mission is to use technology to make it as seamless and simple and useful as possible for the consumer to figure out how to take advantage of what we're offering at the property. We're also and working very hard to make our own employees, right, who are, that's what we are, as a company of people, right? We don't own the real estate. We own very little beyond a few computers. What we really are is a company of highly, highly, highly talented people. And our objective is to improve the quality of their work lives, make them more efficient, make them more productive, equip them with the technologies that'll allow them to stop doing the rules-based, redundant, repetitive work and do the work that is more fulfilling for them professionally and also creates more value for our clients, our retailers, and our shoppers. So we've built a technology ecosystem. It's in a wheel form. If we were to put it up and look at it, and it involves components such as a building operating system, which is Building Engines. Prism is the one we lean toward. Yardi for accounting and financial reporting work, but there are a lot around websites, and we'll get to that, I know, and how we're using social media. A lot around AI for lease abstracting, AI to help shoppers understand how to navigate the shopping center and to connect them into retailers through the chat functionality. I could go on for literally the rest of our time about technology. The answer is yes, everywhere that we can possibly imagine to put technology to use.
Yeah. Just talking about AI, the example I gave today was kind of funny, but most of what I investigate with AI just blows me away, the possibilities. So I think there's a lot of future for that. And let's get into our group chat. Let's bring back Stephen. And for folks in the chat room, this is your opportunity to ask a question of two industry leaders. And there's a whole bunch of questions for me to sift through. So while I do that, let me start off with a question of my own, which is around department stores. So the traditional definition of a mall included department store anchors, sometimes one, sometimes two. I've seen as many as four. That has gone away to a great extent. Stephen, I'll start with you. What's your take on the department store? Will they be there in the mall in 20 years?
So I think there still is a really important role for department stores, just not for the department store to be the only type of anchor at the malls. And if you look at a company like Dillard's, they've thrived over the past 5 years. They've done an amazing job of upgrading their stores, bringing in new brands. A lot of the DTC brands start in department stores before they open stores, and that's how they get better visibility. So I think there definitely is that role, but you need more because originally when the malls were built, then the department stores were bringing all the traffic. Now you don't have as much coming from the department stores, so you need other kind of anchors like Kristen was talking about. And you see like Dick's Sporting Goods has a new concept, House of Sports, which is incredibly exciting. It's over 100,000 square feet. It's basically a department store approach to sporting goods. Their displays are interactive. There's a lot of experience incorporated in the store. So it's not the traditional type of department store, but it's a great anchor for our malls as we look ahead.
Kristen, any thoughts on department stores?
Yeah, so Stephen mentioned one of the key factors for department stores, and that's brand. Like branding is super important, and also margin, right? They are happily very, very, very good, smart business people, and they like us are there to deliver value, like deliver a valuable service to and valuable product to their shoppers. So department stores on average perform most optimally in the high trafficked better centers, right? And then that's a very healthy cycle. So the department store is performing well. It can continue to reinvest. Stephen, your example about Dillard's, reinvesting constantly, and the reinvestment then leads to even greater margins, and healthy cycle is in place. Where that isn't necessarily, in some of the maybe, certain C malls, D malls in the country, where the department stores aren't enjoying the same traffic levels, and they themselves aren't generating the same traffic levels that they did in the past, that's when repositioning, where, we're taking advantage of the logical opportunity to reposition, and also starting to see some of them go into non-mall, off-mall locations. And again, smartly to enhance their profitability.
Yeah. Okay, here's a question. Would it be cost effective to create a mall as a thematic destination similar to a theme park? So take that vacant department store and turn it into, I don't know, Six Flags or something like that. Any thoughts on how cost effective that would be?
So I'll start if that's okay. I think directionally it's a great question, because adding entertainment has been the most active reuse of former department stores that we've had in our portfolio, and we've added Dave & Buster's and Main Event and Tilt and other entertainment concepts throughout the portfolio, and they've done great. They're very much in demand. We haven't gone the theme park approach like Mall of America or West Edmonton. I think that's really difficult if you don't build it in up front. But I think the whole entertainment aspect is it's a must-have almost to make a mall relevant for the future.
Kristen, any thoughts on adding entertainment?
Everything Stephen said and double down.
Okay,
Yeah.
Good. I love it. Okay, so here's another one. This one from Nicole. She comments that the median income of mall visitors has continued to increase. How do you appeal to higher earners? And is that the target market for many of these recent mall renovations? I'll add in my own comments. I do agree that in a segment of the mall, sort of the A+ malls, that's definitely true. So anyway, how to appeal to those earners? Thoughts, Stephen, Kristen?
I'll touch on a couple things. Social media, we've built significant strategies using social media. Now TikTok, right? TikTok has turned into the search engine for many people today. So we embrace the consumer and attract the consumer and raise their awareness about what's going on at the shopping center through social media campaigns, including now influencers, even micro influencers specific to individual properties, a range of things. I'd also say events, right? So again, creating community, creating connection to the broader community and to the individual user of the property is done through, and we literally build a bridge between the consumer and the merchants at a property through the activations that we do. So I'll stop there, because again, this is one where we could go on for the next hour. Yeah,
I would just add that if you look at retail, is still a huge component of the mall, and we're always focused, and I know Kristen and her teams are in bringing in the best stores that we can for that market. Mm-hmm. And as incomes have gone up and in a market, that's like goal number one. And there are a lot of emerging brands that are expanding stores. Some former internet only, like Warby Parker or Allbirds, and then a lot of just traditional brands that have done extremely well, like Lululemon, and they've had phenomenal success over the last few years because of some of the health in the economy and higher earning power.
And that merchandising that you're talking about, Stephen, that sort of brings us back around to technology in a way. All of this is driven, again, by the consumer. And so we use tremendous amounts of data to understand what that consumer is seeking in their lives. And that allows us to merchandise, design events. And that social media platform is delivering some of the data and also allowing us to take the data and make it beneficial to our customer.
I'm going to throw in a personal comment here about events. So I'm sitting at a co-working space at a center that we manage, the shops at Perry Crossing. And this morning they did this, I don't even know how to describe it. It's an annual Halloween event, the pumpkin drop. So it's in conjunction with a local radio station. And they take a 14,000 pound pumpkin, which is actually an actual pumpkin, and lift it up by a crane and then drop it to the ground, and it smashes everywhere. Don't ask me why they do it, but they do it every year with this like morning radio show. And I don't know how many people were there. We'll have to find out, but it felt like 1,000 people were there. Like it was a lot of people to see this pumpkin drop. And it was just the whole community, everybody from all the local schools, parents, kids, trick-or-treating, eating food. Awesome.
Demonstrating how much people want to gather.
Yeah.
And gather and have shared experiences. And the tradition of that is tremendously important to its community.
Yeah. So let's talk about a little bit more about adding uses, and which uses drive more retail sales. Do you think about that when you're adding an apartment? How many retail sales it might drive at the center?
Stephen, you want to go first?
Yeah. So I would say we haven't added a lot of apartments immediately adjacent, connected to the mall. We've done them more surrounding, and obviously we have a lot of apartments around. So I don't have a lot of data to share on that. I think our sense is that hotels are great for restaurants and other food uses and shopping. They're always bringing in a new customer. So that's a use where we've had success. We've done a couple of those adjacent. Office has been more sparse, where we really don't have a lot of track record with that. Medical is one that we've been very active with, and it's a great complementary use. And medical office is something that we've also had success with.
So I would say theoretically, because I agree, we've got some data points, but I think in the next year or two we'll have more substantial data to work from. But theoretically, residential density should provide more people and over more of the 24-hour, the day parts around 24-hour day, right? Office is a Monday to Friday daytime population. So I would think, if I were guessing, I would say multifamily followed by hospitality. Probably medical is right in there, because the retail can becomes the waiting room for the medical. It's a very the two go together quite nicely. And then I would say, office, very beneficial, but I might rank it after the other three. But I'm just thinking, I don't know if my logic is sound or not.
No, that sounds about right. Now, Mike has a comment about something we haven't talked about, seniors housing. And it's interesting because I was actually just talking to a client about this. Good Class A mall, thinking about adding active seniors to an undeveloped parcel near it. Have you any thoughts on that? If that is makes sense?
I think it gets back to what Kristen said, that there's no real rules. It's really market driven and where the demand is, and if senior housing surfaces as where a component that there's a void in the market, and the mall is the right location. There's land available because it is more land intensive than some of the other uses. It's harder to put senior housing on an acre and a half. You can do that for a hotel. You can do that for, residential might be a little bigger. So you need an adequate land area. But again, it's definitely something that we look at, and I'm sure Kristen and her team looks at.
Yeah, it'd be very submarket specific. I remember working with a client now quite a few years ago on a potential redevelopment of a mall, a relatively small mall in a secondary to tertiary South Carolina market. And at the time, that particular market had a real need for seniors housing. So they developed a plan, were not able to execute it at the end of the day. But in that particular case, I remember I learned the term from this client. They called it a go-go, slow-go, no-go. So their objective was to build a significant enough facility that it could really take people through those three phases as they aged. And you could see, and they intended, it was a very good plan, and they intended to keep retail there as well. So, and a lot of green space. They were converting roofs to green space, which we haven't really talked about. They looked at it very holistically and looked at the synergies of how these uses fit together. So, yep, it's a very good concept.
Gotcha. Okay, I want to change topics here to something. I hope I'm not throwing you a curveball, but let's talk about parking. Have you seen changing strategies around parking, ratios, vehicle circulation, as we're now thinking about more uses in the typical center? Stephen, I'll ask you first.
So there's definitely been changes with parking ratios, and that's created a lot of opportunity. When the malls were first built, they were 5, 6 per 1,000 spaces or per 1,000 square feet, and that's down to 3 to 4 in a lot of locations. You just don't need as much parking area as you did in the past, and so it's opened up land for other opportunities. We did a program of self-storage with basically excess parking around malls or land that we had. That worked out really well. It's a good complementary use. It wasn't driving traffic so much to the mall, but it was a great way to capture value. And there's just pent up value in the real estate that we own. And so by needing less parking, it allows us to tap into that. And we're creating pads for restaurants out of former parking areas and other types of uses. So that's definitely something that's an opportunity, and it will continue to be as there's more densification. And these areas, when they were built, there was nothing around the malls, but now they're very dense suburban areas for the most part, and so there will continue to be densification. Traffic patterns, that's an issue because traffic is challenging and infrastructure is expensive. So that's something that we look at, and we try to do what we can to improve it, working close with municipalities. But that's a challenge, and people when they say why don't you go to the mall, it's because it's so busy or so much traffic, and so that's something that we're always trying to work around.
And I'd add that those municipalities that you mentioned, every one of them had a minimum parking ratio in mind in the past. Now some of them are implementing maximum parking ratios in order to ensure that people are encouraged to use public transportation. More and more, we're connecting public transportation as an industry, connecting public transportation to these sites. And so it definitely leads to there's a different parking requirement when it's all said and done. And then the other thing I'd add here is there's also the introduction of, EV charging stations, some of that being done simply driven by the developer, right? Driven by the developer in order to again, constantly meeting the needs of the consumer for the project. But some of that is also very much in the interest of that municipality, and for example, I was in Peru, Illinois a few weeks ago, and there's a fairly new Hy-Vee grocery store. This is not a mall, but there's a fairly new Hy-Vee grocery store, and it has 20 Tesla, 20, I counted them, 20 Tesla EV stalls in its parking lot. And I promise you there are not 20 EV cars there to serve, but it's along a major highway as one goes east and west through the state of Illinois. So it's a logical place to do it. And that, by the way, is an example of a market where some of the typical mall occupants have gone off mall into neighboring power centers, jewelry stores, Spencer, and department stores. They've gone off mall. So it's really, to circle back around, it really is critically important for us to look at each property every day with an eye toward the future, and to make sure that we're not allowing it, to the extent we can have any influence over it, that we're not allowing, that we're continuing to create an environment that the retail wants to be there because the shopper wants to be there. It is on us to make sure that we are fulfilling that.
Okay, so let's think a little bit more about the future with this question. There is a possibility of a recession. And there's certainly, even if there's a recession, we've got a shopper who's been facing inflation. So maybe they're thinking about pulling back a little bit. Are there strategies that you as a mall operator can use to make sure you are resilient in a not great economy? Stephen, I'll start with you on this one.
Absolutely. And I think it's a matter of being proactive. And we know our tenant base really well. We look closely at credit. We look at concentration within different categories. We've intentionally tried to diversify away from just pure apparel over the past 10 years. We've had a lot of cycles in the economy and a lot of different factors that have impacted that. But it's something that we think about a lot, and where we're worried about a certain retailer and their viability, we're coming up with backups that we can put in, or being proactive and trying to bring in something else. It also ties in with what we were talking about earlier about the mix of uses, and having uses like medical that aren't as that aren't as dependent on the economy and the health of the economy, that are going to kind of be there regardless of what's going on. So it's a really important factor that as hands-on operators of properties, malls, retail properties, that we need to be on top of.
So in addition to diversifying uses, and then diversifying even inside the retail, the traditional retail uses, we're diversifying. Well, for one thing, there are two segments that are doing quite well right now: luxury and value, right? So ensuring that we are introducing value in the right way to the shopping center. In my trip to Canada this week, I saw some of the dollar stores, on-mall dollar stores, are doing tremendous volumes, but in shopping centers with very high-end merchants. So it's the range, right? It's fulfilling the range of things. And that's just, a shopper can comfortably visit both, right? Very comfortably visit both because they want to spend their money in the way that they think is most strategic for them. But I would also say specialty leasing is a way that we can create it's sort of a constantly evolving merchandise mix in a very cost-effective manner, both for the specialty leasing merchant as well as for the owner of the property. And it's a way to freshen the offering, the overall offering. So that's one more tactic that I would encourage.
For folks that are watching that aren't insiders, when you say specialty leasing, explain what you mean by that.
Most of the particularly the inline merchants in a mall enter into longer term leases, 5, 7, 8, 10 years. But what we do is we also introduce some of the common area uses, some of the inline uses are tenants that come into the property on a license agreement, which is much shorter in term and gives them an opportunity to really test shopper demand right? And as I said, gives us an opportunity to create an income stream for the owner of the property, and also to provide just some excitement in the merchandising mix. So we bring in seasonal merchants that address the seasons, and adds to it's almost an event feel with some of the merchants that come in for maybe a weekend or a week or a very short season. We're trying to make sure that when you get to the property, you're discovering new things all the time. That's
yes,
right.
Yeah.
That the hope is you're discovering new things in addition to those things that you know that you're coming for. You're also coming for the surprises.
Here's a question. It's a long one, but so Kim, first off, making the assumption that in the future we'll only work 3 days a week, which I find a little bit hard to imagine. But she does say people will be looking for activities, learning new skills, exploring things, enjoying their free time. And she points to libraries as an example of that. Now, I know we've seen libraries in malls, but she points out art labs, skill labs, podcast labs, flight schools. Do you have in either of you in your centers like educational type things at all?
Yes. But by the way, hi Kim, nice to see you. And can I add a couple things to that list? We've just recently added, to great enthusiastic reception, a game show studio at Rosedale Center in Minneapolis. So it's these experiential things that people can go in to do, and in some cases upskill, or gain a new skill, whatever it may be. So I think there are a lot of those types of things. I have to say, I'm with you, James. I'm not sure that I know that people are going to be able to find themselves working 3 days a week, but maybe they're working 3 days a week from an office or some other workplace, and have a little flexibility in their lives the rest of the time. So yeah, in terms of education, yeah, we're definitely seeing everything from preschools up to and including community colleges, right? Again, looking at the space, some of it is like literally the space is useful to them because it was a theater, and that space physically is useful, but also proximity to their consumer. So yeah, full range of things.
Stephen, any other unique uses in any of your centers? I don't know, anything that we haven't touched on already?
So there's a lot of education. I think there's different forms. We have Hall of Fame museums in malls that we've, local Hall of Fames. We do programs with nonprofits and have them have spaces that are either shorter term or where they can conduct activities in a lot of malls to, again, involve the community. I think there's a lot of, and to Kristen's point about specialty leasing, the mall tenant base is not all nationals anymore. It's not even close to that. So there are a lot of more locals and regionals, and there's so much entrepreneurial interest because of the way that the changes in the way people work. So we're having expos for all types of business owners, veterans, women, Black-owned, other types of owners, to try to, again, make people know or let people know that the mall's an option for them to come in and try out their concept and be entrepreneurial and, and use some of the space that we have. So there's a lot of creativity that's been, something that it's, I think, one of the more exciting things in terms of the different uses that we bring in. We've also we have casinos. We have 2 casinos that are anchors to malls that, we never would have thought of doing that, 10 years ago. But there's a gaming component, but it's really entertainment. There's restaurants, there's event spaces, there's a lot of different community room. There's a lot of different activities as part of that, and so I feel like it does get back to that point that we want to try to keep it fresh and offer something new and make it a compelling experience.
Yeah, and I'd add one more to the list. I saw some video a couple weeks ago about, we talked about social media, and so much of that is content creation. Really, it's an incredibly important aspect of social media. And so content creation studios. So I saw a video in Japan where and they panned all these the studios down the row with the influencers creating their content.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we are just about out of time. Kristen, that's a perfect segue. Our next LinkedIn Live next month is going to be on using social media, specifically TikTok and Instagram, to advertise shopping centers. We're going to have influencers and marketing experts on to talk about it. So folks, be sure to look out for that. But Stephen, Kristen, we just passed by an hour in a blink of an eye. I want to thank you so much. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you, James.
Thank you. Enjoyed it a lot.
So much.
All right. So for folks out there, if you want to see everything that we produce video wise, go over to everythingweknow.show. That'll take you to our YouTube channel. But we do a lot more than video. We do audio interviews. We have new podcast episodes, audio only episodes that come out every week. The show is called Where We Buy. You can listen on whatever your favorite podcast app is. I like to use Spotify myself. So just search for Where We Buy in your favorite podcast app, or go over to wherewebuy.show. If you're heading over to YouTube, be sure to subscribe. You'll get the invitations to all of our LinkedIn Lives that also stream on YouTube. But if you want to watch us on LinkedIn, where 99% of people do, it's like we have like 600 people sign up on LinkedIn and like 2 on YouTube. I don't think we're a YouTube show. Follow JLL Retail on LinkedIn. That way you're going to get the updates on whenever we're doing a new LinkedIn Live, when we drop a new video, we drop a new podcast, whatever it is. Check it out, JLL Retail. So we're going to be back again next month talking about social media. But for today, what did we learn about retail today? I think, summing up what I heard and kind of how we ended it was this idea that there's opportunities if you're creative. So creativity and resilience are how the mall is going to succeed into the future, whatever the use ends up being, whatever types of tenants there are. It's still going to be a mall. So if you want to know more about everything we know about retail, you can join us here again next month.